up at the woman. "I'm gonna need my own order of sweet potato fries. Tara's being stingy with hers." The woman smiled back. "I'll get right on that." She stepped away to turn in Nick's order. I picked up a fry and ran it along the edge of the plate, gathering some errant sugar crystals. This place served their sweet potato fries with a dusting of granulated sugar rather than salt, essentially turning the fries into a dessert. Not that I was complaining. Still, sweet potatoes were touted as a vitamin and mineral-rich superfood, so I refused to feel guilty for indulging. I think they even had antioxidants. Good thing, because I'd been feeling quite oxidized lately. "Have you given any thought to our honeymoon?" I asked Nick before taking a bite. Nick stole another fry from my plate. "Heck yeah, I've been thinking about our honeymoon. That's about all I've been thinking about." He sent me a sexy smile and a wink. "How about we spend some time on the water?" "Good idea. A cruise would be fun. Maybe we could go to the Bahamas or Jamaica." There were several cruises that left from Galveston and sailed to ports all over the Caribbean. "Forget the cruise," Nick said. "I was thinking we could take my bass boat out to Lake Texoma and do some fishing. Maybe catch yourself some catfish or bluegill." "Catfish? Is he crazy?" I pointed a fry at him. "I am not spending my honeymoon with a bucket of worms at my feet." "So I should bring my artificial lures, then?" He arched a brow, his eyes dancing in amusement. I tossed the fry into my mouth and offered a much better suggestion. "What about Cancun?" The beautiful Mexican resort town was where Nick and I had first laid eyes on each other, though it had been under challenging circumstances. Nick and I both worked as criminal investigators for the Internal Revenue Service. When I'd joined the IRS, a little over a year ago, Nick's office across the hall from mine sat empty. When I asked about the mysterious unused space, my coworkers told me it belonged to Nick Pratt, a senior special agent who had worked an undercover investigation 3 years before, targeting a violent criminal mastermind named Marcos Mendoza. Mendoza ran a variety of cross-border criminal enterprises, ranging from gambling to credit card counterfeiting. What's more, Mendoza's business associates had a tendency to disappear or meet untimely, suspicious, and gruesome deaths. As the story went, Nick had accepted a multi-million-dollar bribe from Mendoza and escaped into Mexico, living out his days in a beach paradise out of reach of U.S. law enforcement. I'd been assigned to reopen the Mendoza case when fresh evidence came to light. The IRS learned that Mendoza had been laundering his money through a local accountant named Andrew Sheffield, who'd been found butchered, his body parts strewn about the state, one foot surfacing in a garbage bin behind the police headquarters in El Paso. Eek! Nick managed to contact me discreetly and implored me to help him. He told me his cover had been blown when he'd been working the case, and the only way he'd been able to save his own life was to pretend to be for sale. He'd been in forced exile ever since, and desperately wanted to come home and clear his name. I'd agreed, foolishly perhaps, to go to Cancun to meet him. When he'd emerged from the surf, wearing only a tiger-striped Speedo, it took everything in me not to shout, "Dios mío!" Once he'd convinced me of his innocence, I'd smuggled him back across the border, a Border Patrol canine nearly making me wet myself when he alerted on the truck I was driving. Fortunately, the dog had been more